Commander Dante is the current and longest reigning chapter master of the Blood Angels Space Marine chapter. In addition to being the master of one of the noblest yet most bloodthirsty of all Space Marine chapters, Dante is also the Lord Regent of Imperium Nihilus, a role that would be personally bestowed upon him by none other than Rabute Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines and Lord Commander of the Imperium. At approximately 1500 years of age, give or take a century or two, Dante is one of the oldest and most experienced warriors to still exist within the Imperium, with only a few warriors encased within the sarcophagi of a dreadnought being even older by far. With his combination of experience, nobility, fearlessness, valor, and skill at arms, Dante has become a celebrated figure of awe and inspiration to both mortals and Astartes alike, a shining beacon of hope in a time of encroaching darkness. Despite being such a revered figure for the common citizenry of the Imperium, the burden of duty is over time beginning to weigh heavier and heavier upon Dante's shoulders. While he secretly longs for the day where he can finally rest, Dante will never forsake his oath to defend humanity from the many dangers that exist within the galaxy, nor will he abandon the obligations and responsibilities that are brought about by his near-legendary status as both a military commander and protector of humanity. During the dying days of M41, the Tyrannids of High Fleet Leviathan would begin to carve a path of destruction across the galaxy, emerging from beneath the galactic plane. What was disturbing, however, was the fact that even though various splinter fleets were striking at any and all worlds within their path, the bulk of Leviathan's forces appeared to be actively seeking out the Blood Angels' homeworld of Baal, seemingly intent on rendering the Blood Angels extinct. In response, Dante began to initiate preparations for the Blood Angels to make a last stand upon Baal, and would even request the aid of countless other Blood Angel successor chapters, such as the Angels Sanguine, Charnel Guard, Flesh Tearers, and many others, in order to defend the ancestral home of their gene-sire, Sanguinius, from the encroaching Tyrannid swarm. Even renegade chapters, such as the Knights of Blood, would send word of their intent to stand beside the Blood Angels in battle, even if their aid in particular was not sought out. But there was one successor chapter that Dante outright refused to seek aid from: the Angels Vermillion. The Angels Vermillion are a Blood Angel successor chapter that was created during the Second Founding, whose origins lie within the 9th chapter of the Blood Angels Legion during the time of the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. While the chapter have proven themselves in many campaigns, claiming victory after victory against the enemies of humanity, the Angels Vermillion actively shun their fellow sons of Sanguinius, wishing to bear the twin curse of their gene seed, the Black Rage and the Red Thirst, in isolation. Yet despite the honours earned and the valorous exploits performed by the Angels Vermillion, Commander Dante shows hostility, if not outright hatred, towards the chapter. When Aphael, the captain of the Blood Angels' Second Company, inquired as to why Dante would not seek out the aid of the Angels Vermillion, Dante became legitimately enraged by the question. The only other Blood Angels who seemed to know the truth behind Dante's hatred of the Angels Vermillion would be those individuals that held the position of High Chaplain. So what are the reasons behind Dante's hostility towards the Angels Vermillion? Within the novel Devastation of Baal, 100 battle brothers from the Angels Vermillion would set foot within the Blood Angels Fortress Monastery to answer the Blood Angels' summons for aid. Dante, in front of the other assembled sons of Sanguinius, would become angered by the Vermillion's presence, and began to spitefully allude to the various practices being undertaken by the Angels Vermillion. According to Dante, such acts involved slaughtering and spilling the blood of innocent civilians. Captain Fen of the Angels Vermillion, who was well aware of Dante's distaste towards his chapter, would claim that all who share the gene seed of Sanguinius are guilty of similar such crimes, and that to place the blame solely upon the Angels Vermillion was an act of hypocrisy.
Which chapter can claim their hands are clean of innocent blood? All of us know brothers who have fallen. Your Tower of Vermillion holds its own secrets. How are they who are held within fed? We institutionalize butchery only to prevent worse atrocity. Our chapter is not the only one to set its appetites this way. For the loss of a few, the many are protected.
But when Dante spoke of the Angels Vermillion spilling innocent blood, what specific incident is the Blood Angels chapter master referring to? The events that raised Dante's ire against the Angels Vermillion are detailed within the short story Eminent Sanguis from the limited edition of the novel Dante. In 428 M41, the Blood Angels High Chaplain Herion and a small accompanying entourage would travel to Coronal, the homeworld of the Angels Vermillion, on the behalf of the Imperial Navy. The purpose of this visit was to investigate as to why the Angels Vermillion were in possession of a number of charter ships that were in the process of transporting refugees from the world of Dovar, which had recently fallen victim to a Xenos incursion. When Herion's ship entered Coronal's orbit, the world's planetary defense batteries threatened to destroy the Blood Angels vessel, and requests for the Blood Angels to meet with the chapter master of the Angels Vermillion were repeatedly denied. It was only after Herion threatened that the actions being undertaken by the Angels Vermillion could potentially lead them to being declared as renegades that Herion was granted permission to make planetfall, on the condition that he would do so alone. When Herion set foot within the Blood Spike, fortress monastery of the Angels Vermillion, the High Chaplain would, after a considerable amount of waiting, receive an audience with Chapter Master Chaud. Chaud made no attempt to hide his annoyance at Herion's arrival, stating that the High Chaplain's arrival was an unwelcome distraction, due to the Angels Vermillion being preoccupied with a ceremony known as the Sorrowing, an event that the chapter conducts once every 50 years. Chaud stated flatly that he would return the charter's ships to the Imperial Navy within approximately a week. But when Herion inquired about the ship's crew and the refugees that they were transporting, Chaud would lead the High Chaplain into a great industrialized chamber reminiscent of an abattoir or processing plant. The Devarnian refugees, as well as the majority of the chapter's thralls, who themselves would be replaced with fresh conscripts following the culmination of the ritual, were all suspended from great chains while being drained of their blood, the gruesome harvest being conducted by the chapter's sanguinary priests. Chaud then explained to Herion that once this blood harvest was complete, the Battle Brothers of the Angels Vermillion were to both drink deep of and bathe in the vitae, before the blood of one of the chapter's sanguinary priests would also be added to this mixture, in order to treat the fluid with the very essence of Sanguinius, an act that would lead to the death of the chosen priest. This gory concoction would then be introduced into the nutrient dispensers of their armor in order to nourish the Angels Vermillion in battle. Chaud would also state that because of this ritual undertaken by the chapter, the onset of the Black Rage had become an incredibly rare occurrence for the Angels Vermillion, with fewer and fewer Battle Brothers being introduced into the Death Company as a result. While he claimed that it was necessary for his chapter to undertake such drastic actions, Chaud assured Herion that the Sorrowing, as implied by its very name, provided no sense of joy to the Angels Vermillion. Chaud would also add that those innocents whose lives were taken during the course of the ceremony would have their bones enshrined within the chapter's Hall of Martyrs, a gesture that Chaud claimed was a great honor for Coronal's mortal population. Herion, however, was angered and sickened by the events of the Sorrowing, claiming that such a ritual profaned the very life force of Sanguinius himself, and in his rage would attack, killing a pair of Chaud's sanguinary guard in the process. It was only due to the arrival of a pair of Angels Vermillion tactical squads that Herion laid down his executioner's axe. Chaud instructed his brothers that Herion was not to be harmed, before informing the High Chaplain that he was to return to Baal and inform Dante that, while the Angels Vermillion remain loyal to the Imperium, they would address the Curse of Sanguinius in whatever way they deem fit. Herion, in his rage, threatened that Dante would be informed of Chaud's actions, and that it would be better if the Master of the Vermillion were slain and his chapter disbanded than allow these atrocities to continue. Chaud would remark, however, that he had already taken precautions against such a threat, and issued his own ultimatum to Herion.
Forever we of the blood have kept our shame hidden from the eyes of the Inquisition. If the Blood Angels move against us, then we shall reveal the true nature of our sanguineous bloodline to all. Not only we, but the Blood Angels and every chapter of the Blood will be cast down, and the name of the Perfect Angel shall become synonymous with horror.
Herion would finally relent before returning to his ship, stating that while the Charter's ships would be returned to the Imperial Navy, the fate of the Devonian refugees was for Dante's ears only. As we can see, Dante's disdain towards the Angels Vermillion was in fact not just linked to one specific action, for not only did the Angels Vermillion slaughter innocent refugees who sought sanctuary with the chapter after fleeing from a Xenos invasion, but the chapter defiled the very blood of Sanguinius that flows within the veins of their sanguinary priests. Perhaps most damningly, the Angels Vermillion almost petulantly threatened to expose the flaws of the Black Rage and the Red Thirst to the Inquisition, which by extension could potentially condemn all the sons of Sanguinius to extinction. Chapter Master Chaud would continue to lead the Angels Vermillion for many centuries, until he was slain in battle against the Necrons approximately 40 years prior to the devastation of Baal, and would be succeeded by the chapter's former first captain, Culdath Moore. However, according to Captain Fen, the atrocities being committed by the chapter under Moore's leadership are growing more and more extreme. This in itself would prompt many members of the Angels Vermillion to seek atonement for their chapter's sins by journeying to Baal in order to aid in its defense. Though 3 entire companies would set forth for Baal, only 100 battle brothers would survive their journey to the Baal system as they battled their way through the endless swarm of High Fleet Leviathan. But this raises a more important question, one that the other sons of Sanguinius potentially may have overlooked. Since the butchery being perpetrated by the Angels Vermillion is growing greater in its intensity, then could such actions be the chapter's first steps in walking the Eightfold Path? If the Angels Vermillion are slowly becoming corrupted by their bloody rituals, then Dante would most certainly be the one to lead the charge against them. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.